filmy layer on top of the brain. Does anybody know what this is? I don't think I've really taught you guys that thin, filmy layer that surrounds the top of the brain. It's a little bit white. Yep. Pia mater, very good. So I'm lifting up a little bit of the pia mater right here. See that? And that, underneath it, is when you see the cortex, the brain. The gyri, the sulci are the grooves, the gyri are the hills, convolutions. What makes us unique as humans is this large part in the front. So I'm looking at the top view of the brain. However, if I, turn it on its side, like this, or like
Why are they squishing? Looks like
okay, so where my thumb is pointing to right here, that's the prefrontal cortex, right? In humans, the prefrontal cortex is larger in proportion to the rest of the brain than other animals, and that's what makes us unique, and that maybe what makes us able to do complicated tasks, complicated thinking. So you have the pia mater. Now, in this brain, if you were to feel it, it's hard. It feels hard. In the real brain, it's quite soft. It's very sort of jello-y like, and if you were to take it out of somebody's head after they died, obviously, then it would fall apart. Okay, so it would crumble. And what's keeping it together here is the chemicals, but what's really keeping it together when you don't have the chemicals is this pia mater. That's what's keeping it together. When you take that off, so what they do is they leave this tissue on, fixate it with the chemicals, and then they'll take it off later. So around the pia mater, you have another layer of tissue. Anybody know what that's called? I'm lifting it up right now. Dura mater. So it's like thick. You see how thick, much thicker tissue this is? It's quite strong. This is protecting your brain and encasing it, and it would go right on top. This part in the middle goes through the inner hemispheric fissure. That deep groove in the middle of your two hemispheres, it goes through there. You can actually see some of the deoxygenated blood in here that's blue. It's from a major vein that's draining all the blood from your brain to your heart, back down to the heart. So this is the dura mater. This is part of a spinal cord. We don't have the full thing. So this is actually probably from thoracic down. So your spinal cord is about twice this, but it's really actually shorter than most people think. It's not that long. And these big circular areas, that you see here are, I'll try to put it on are those dorsal root ganglions, those areas that carry the cell bodies of all those sensory nerves that are coming into your spinal cord and then going to your brain. So here's the spinal cord. If you look at the cross-section of the spinal cord, can anyone see the butterfly, the tiny little butterfly in there? It's white. That is what in the spinal cord? Anybody? So in the spinal cord, you have two sections. You have the inside butterfly sort of area, which is the white matter, and then on the outside, you have, so it's going to look a little bit lighter in color because it's all the axons, right? It's all the axons of all the nerves going up to your brain and all of them coming down to your brain. And if you look at the relative size of my finger, it's really small, it's really thin, right? Your spinal cord is very, very thin. It's all its axons compressed really, really tightly together so that if you had damage there, you would damage a lot of those axons, and that's why spinal cord injury is so unfortunate. So these are the dorsal root ganglions. These are like spinal cord, the roots that are coming out that are carrying the nerves. And this is just a layer of tissue that's surrounding the spinal cord. Do me a favor and don't put videos on YouTube. Okay, I have a half of the brain that we've just cut in half. So you can see the medial surface, the sagittal medial surface of the brain. Does anybody know what this structure is right here? I'll put it up here. This structure right here. A corpus callosum, right? So that's actually what's connecting the left and the right sides of the brain. This is the front part of your brain. This would be the occipital lobe. This would be where your primary visual cortex is. And then right surrounding it are the extra striate areas like that process motion, they process color, all of those higher association areas that are not primary visual, that are associated with vision. Your frontal lobe here, you have the orbital frontal cortex, where my finger is here, sits right above your orbit of your eyes. And this is where Phineas Gage, remember he had that hole that went through here and went through out here. So the prefrontal area was damaged in Phineas Gage. A lot of it was orbital frontal, but also some of this medial frontal. When we say medial, we mean it's on the medial surface of the brain, versus lateral would be on the lateral surface, the outside surface. Medial is closer to the midline. Right above the corpus callosum, we have a brain area here that my finger's going along. This is known as the, anybody? Cingulate gyrus. Remember anterior cingulate? I don't know if I actually talked about this in this class. I might have did it in my other class. This is your thalamus, where my finger is here. Hypothalamus is right below it. Remember, thalamus is the area that relays everything from below, from the spinal cord, up to the cortex, up to the brain. It also relays everything from the brain down to the spinal cord. So all the axons, all the cells that are trying to go from the cortex to the spinal cord, they're going to pass through the thalamus. We call it a relay station, basically. Now hypothalamus, which is right below it, right here, is going to be controlling a lot of your hormone regulation, your body temperature, homeostasis, appetite, all of those things. Rage, is also associated there. So let's see. I'm going to turn it this way. This fissure here that my thumb is going along is called the lateral fissure. This is your temporal lobe right here. So this area is primary auditory. This is the area that is important for what you're hearing, so processing basically the perception of sound. And then right on the back posterior side, as you follow this lateral fissure up and you go to the temporal lobe, right where my finger is here, this is known as Wernicke's area. Wernicke's area, if you have damage to this area in the left hemisphere, right? I can tell because the frontal lobe's over here and the occipital lobe's over here. If you damage this area in the left hemisphere, you'll have problems understanding language. You can produce language fine, but it sounds like gibberish and it doesn't really make any sense. So Wernicke's aphasia, which is called aphasia, is inability to basically you have a language problem, is inability to comprehend speech. However, if you had damage or a stroke that left you with damage up here, which is in the frontal lobe, I know this is the frontal lobe because this lateral fissure is the boundary between the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe. So right around here is where most of in this room, our Broca's area would be in this area. And so if you damage this area, you have difficulty producing language. You can understand speech fine, you just can't make words, you can't produce language. Now in left-handers, in half of left-handers, it's going to be on the right hemisphere, and in half of left-handers, it stays on the left hemisphere. One interesting fact. If I open up this lateral fissure a little bit, you might see a little bit of cortex. You can't see because it's too dark. But there's a smooth area of cortex in there. So the fissure doesn't go all the way. It hits a part of the brain known as the insula. And the insula, you guys remember, did I talk about the insula in this class? Yeah, and I talked about disgust. Or what did I talk about in this class? It's activated when people are looking at faces that express disgust. I might have mentioned something else in this class. That's one thing that insula does. And okay. Now, if I were to follow this solstice all the way up, I would see. So you see this solstice right here. That is the central solstice. That is the boundary between the frontal lobe and the occipital lobe. Frontal lobe here, the area of brain that is right anterior. I'm trying to look at the picture and also anterior to the central solstice that I'm moving my thumb across right here. That is your primary motor cortex. That is where your motor homunculus is. Remember, it's all the area, all of this area in the brain is what's allowing you to make voluntary movements. But each area is going to be important for moving a different part of your body. So, you have a larger, section for areas that maybe need more brain dedicated to them. Right posterior to the central solstice, right here, is the primary sensory cortex. That's your somatosensory area, and that's where your sensory homunculus is. The same sort of little man map on your brain, where the different parts of your body map on to the different parts of your brain in a way that is specific to how much sensitivity you have in that area. So your lips are very sensitive, your fingertips are very sensitive, so you're going to have a lot more of this area of the brain dedicated to your lips and your fingertips. They also do curve around, so this sensory cortex goes all the way into the medial surface of the brain right here. And then here's the cingulate gyrus, so that is where it stops. Okay, what else? This right here is the optic chiasm. This is where your the ganglion cells in your eye that travel into eventually going into your occipital lobe. Some of those are going to cross and go to the other side of the brain, and that's where this crossing occurs. And that's what allows for you to have the right visual field, everything you see in the right visual field being projected to your left occipital lobe. And everything in your left visual field is being projected to the right occipital lobe. And so you have this effect. If the corpus callosum is cut, then you have problems in not the visual information going there, but being sent to the other hemispheres. And so we'll talk about splitting mechanisms for that. Okay. So I'm going to, at the break or after class, let you guys come up. We're going to see how it works. We're all adults here. It's not like when I go to the kids, I have to be like, ooh, your row gets to come up first, and you guys. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously,